This is the House of Hockey podcast,
where we talk about the game and the lifestyle.
We've got opinions as hockey fans, friends, and from the female perspective.
Welcome to our house.
Welcome to the House of Hockey podcast. This is episode 182. I'm one of your hosts, Rachel, and my co-host Breezy is still on the injured reserved list. She's out for this interview. But today I'm so excited to finally get to talk to Kirsten Krull. She is the in-game host for the Minnesota Wild. She just wrapped up her 4th season with the team. She's also the host and co-host of the Bar Down Beauties podcast. She's a Minnesota native. She's done all kinds of things, but I am so excited to have you here because I love so many of the players that you get to experience every night. And I'm wearing my Jake Middleton shirt and I just can't wait to get into it with you. So thanks for being here, Kirsten.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on. And then I know, like I said to you when I first came on, I should have worn one of maybe not only my Middsy shirt, I have that one in my closet too, but a number of other fun player shirts that the Minnesota Wild have partnered with to create. So if I would have been more prepared, I definitely would have.
Listen, you're part of that like marketing in-game, the whole experience, the content that team puts out, like the whole Moose video with him coming out of the water. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're living under a rock, but like the stuff that your team does is so creative and so spot on. What are some of the other shirts that I'm missing in my collection apparently?
The team, I give them so much credit. The social content they've been able to put out and produce, it's been continuing to grow the last couple of years, but I feel this season is really where it just took a big turn and really has been so much fun. It's next level stuff. A lot of really talented people on that Minnesota Wild digital team. But yes, there's a number of other of those shirts. So the Minnesota Wild partners with Soda Stick, and they work together, or Soda Stick kind of takes the reins, but Minnesota Wild, they love the shirts that are produced. So a lot of different player shirts. So Marc-Andre Fleury, he's had a couple, like Flower Power. I have a couple of those in my closet. Marcus Foligno has had one. It was, you mentioned the moose coming out of the water. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. Not Weird, Wild. Those commercials are my favorite. It's literally a t-shirt with him like coming out of the water as a moose. So there's another one. There's that Middleton one. Mm-hmm. There was the Dewey 1, Dewey 2 when Brandon Duhaime, Connor Dewar were on the team. And there was another one for Matt Boldy Shuffle, Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Zuccarello have had some like peanut butter and jelly shirts. So there have been a lot of t-shirts, but they're fun. They're so awesome.
It's just great to see the team sort of really like get it and provide this content and the clothing and just really embrace the nicknames and the vibe of this team, because I think that's something really unique about this particular Wild team over maybe the last couple seasons is the amount of actual like personalities you have, at least known, right? Because we know in this sport in the NHL, we don't often get to see like true player personalities, and the ones that do show them, like they stick out like a sore thumb because we crave that as a fan. And you've got so many, you named so many of them just now, like Flower, you've got Bogosian, Middsy, Kaprizov, Moose, like you had Maroon for a brief period of time too. Like you've got these people that everybody knows or has heard of. I mean, what is that locker room like? I know you don't spend a lot of time there, but you're around these guys a lot. So like, what is the atmosphere? I can't imagine it being boring.
Yeah. So I don't get to spend too much time up close with them, but when I have had interactions or just kind of even being like a fly on the wall, like lower arena level or whatnot, like they're just a very tight knit group of guys. Their personalities, all of them very laid back, all of them very cordial, respectful, polite. I've never had a bad interaction, the few that I've had with any of them. Just like, I think the best way to put it is just a very chill group of guys.
Just despite their like very big personalities. That's surprising.
Yeah. No, Middleton, we've had him on our podcast before and seen him a couple of times just at a couple of wild events. And he's still like in person, for example, like I don't know, it sounds kind of weird to say he exudes this very like inviting presence, but like he's just as goofy in person, or like if you catch him in a conversation as he is, just as you would think. Like, best way to describe it, comes as advertised.
I love that. That's what we want, right? You just get to experience them and they're not afraid to be themselves, which I know can be difficult for them when they're doing interviews and such. So that's always refreshing to hear. Especially,
Absolutely.
I only want to hear good things about Jake Middleton because I'm a big stan of his.
Oh, as you should be. Just even watching the Bally Sports broadcast, one of one of my favorite people in the entire Wild organization broadcasting team, Kevin Gorg, he's the team reporter for the network, and it just kind of, he was part of like that whole tarps off thing, because anytime, like, that was the joke that kind of started it, was whenever Kevin Gorg would be doing interviews, like Jake Middleton would be shirtless with his heart monitor on his chest. And so then it just kind of became a joke, like, oh, Jake Middleton doesn't do interviews unless he's shirtless. He, I think, went shirtless on a TNT interview too, and they picked up on the whole tarps off. But then the Wild digital team and Kevin Gorg took it a step further, doing like a little like Not Weird Wild commercial, if you've ever seen those. And then Kevin Gorg had one of those t-shirts on. Like it was a ticket pack one night too that the Wild came up with. It was a Jake Middleton shirtless t-shirt. So it had his tattoos and the heart monitor on it. Well, it was like a fake interview. Kevin Gorg was wearing that t-shirt, and then it was a shirtless Jake Middleton. So it's just like, it's stuff like that keeps things off the ice very entertaining.
It's so fun. And there's moments for it, right? There's moments for the fun. There's moments for the serious. What is the fan base and the in-game experience like in Minnesota? I haven't yet been to a Wild game. You've got to give us some insight for those who haven't been. You're in the crowd. You're with the fans. What's it like?
It's absolutely incredible. And this year too, we talk a lot about game presentation because that's the department that I work in. Again, I'm going to give a little shout out. Excuse me. I was going to say shameless shout out to one of our editors who does all of the graphics and everything. His name's Ryan. He, like, if you haven't seen it, go online. You can find it. Just our intro video this season, all of the LEDs, the video to get the crowd hyped up. I've seen it at least 100 times now throughout this year. I get chills every time I watch it. It was just that well done. And that alone, it just kind of, the atmosphere to set the stage for the crowd to get them going. The thing unique to the Wild games is there's like a lighthouse that goes off like a foghorn. So anytime we score, we're welcoming the team onto the ice for intros. That foghorn goes off. It's a very unique atmosphere when you're walking the concourse. It's kind of like cabin themed. So I've been to a number of NHL arenas now. I think I've been to, I shouldn't say a number. I've been to like 6 different ones. So it's not that impressive, but you can kind of tell too which arenas out of that small scope have a very like unique atmosphere to them the second you walk in the door. And I think that's one thing Minnesota does really well. Like there's some arenas you walk in, it kind of feels more like a corporate event center, but you come into Minnesota and you're like, no, I'm in a hockey arena and it's branded for Minnesota. The fans are phenomenal. It's no secret the Wild didn't have the greatest season this year. We're sitting here after we were eliminated from just any postseason contention. So unfortunately not making the playoffs this year, just getting to be an outsider watching the other teams. But regardless of not being a team who made the postseason, I think from what my boss had said, the Wild were the number 1 team in the entire NHL with the attendance for this season. So just the fans are dedicated. When they are there, they are into the games. And even again, as we inched closer to the end of the season, everyone knew Wild were out of contention. The games were still electric. There was still almost every single seat in that arena filled. So fans definitely back the team for sure.
That's always good to hear that the fans are there and supporting no matter what, because we've seen some changes with some different teams like Arizona, who's no longer there. And, we don't have to talk about that, but we don't like to see that happen. And so it's always good to hear that teams and fan bases are solid and showing up. Is there anything unique that Minnesota that you guys do for the in-game experience, like any of the fun intermission games, like, you know, Chicago has the like shoot the puck into the like tiny little hole on the net? Like, do you guys have any quintessential sort of traditions that you do in game?
There's a few things. Like, as far as games go, I'm not so sure that there's, I guess, anything like specific, like intermission activity that's like makes you go like Minnesota when you think about it. But one of like the game presentation aspects that we do is before every single game, right after the national anthem, when the puck is about to be dropped, there's a special guest who does we call it the Let's Play Hockey call. So it depends kind of the theme, but like we've had, for example, like PJ Fleck, the head coach of the Minnesota Gophers football team. We had Byron Buxton, Alex Correa on the Minnesota Twins during playoffs last year do it. So a number of people such as that. We've had the hockey guys do it. Me and my co-host were lucky enough. Like it was a bucket list item for me to be able to do the Let's Play Hockey call it sometime. And so me and my co-host got to do it on the New Year's Eve game this past year. So that was super cool. But basically all it is you get introduced over the PA system, and then you get the crowd ready to go. You're like, all right, Minnesota, it's game time. Everyone get on your feet, say it with me. Let's play hockey. And then they drop the puck. So that's probably the one thing really unique to Minnesota that you'll see when you come to a game. And it's really cool. It's a surprise for the fans too, because it's somebody different every game that gets to do the call.
I had never heard of this. I don't feel like I've seen any clips on social, or maybe not. It's just lost in my feed, but I didn't know you guys did this. I think that's great. It's sort of like let's play ball, baseball kind of vibe, but not, and just really ties it all together. That's so cool. You got to do it. Did you drop the puck too then?
Nope, you don't drop the puck. So it's up on our stage where we do all of like our in-arena hosting promotions. So we have a little stage up there. So the camera will pan, you're up there, and then just the refs will take it from there to drop the puck. But it was cool too, because even Frozen 4 this past year, sorry, I think my Taylor Swift albums, if I'm being completely honest, FedEx is dropping them off right now and my dog's going crazy. So if you hear
he's
all
just
of that
as
in the
excited
background
as you are for Taylor Swift.
No, absolutely. So I apologize, everybody. He's not a fan of the delivery trucks.
Listen, neither is my dog. I've got 2 dogs here too, so it's no surprise for dog barking on this podcast. It's totally normal. Sometimes my cat walks through. Sometimes my aunt walks through. Like all kinds of weird stuff has happened. We're very casual here, so don't worry. I think everybody's used to listening to a brief moment of dog barking in the background for delivery.
Yeah, it can be the little background music or whatever you want to call it. But so I was very fortunate I was able and asked to work the men's Frozen 4 it was actually about a week ago now. The XL Energy Center, St. Paul was the host city this year, and I was doing in-arena hosting for it, and it was just kind of cool too. It ties back into the Let's Play Hockey. PWHL Minnesota, they do it. Frozen 4, because it was unique to Minnesota, they also did a Let's Play Hockey call. So it was former Golden Gopher Minnesota Wild player Jordan Leopold who did it for that game. And then the hockey guys did it the other time. And I think there was one other one that I'm missing. So I apologize to who did that.
Okay. There's a lot of people who do it, so it's okay.
Absolutely. So it's cool how even like events being hosted in Minnesota at the XL Energy Center, how they kind of like carry that throughout different things too.
That's nice to see that go through. And then, so it's sort of like in Carolina, they do the hurricane bell siren. I don't know what you call that.
Yes.
Where they like do that before the game, before puck drop, and even like the cannons in Columbus. So that's your take. I like that element of the in-game experience. I kind of wish Chicago had that, but we've got our own anthem thing that sort of sets the vibe. So we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, I know years back too, they did this thing called like This Is Our Ice, and they would take like water from like a lake or a pond in Minnesota, and they would like pour it into the ice. I'm not gonna lie, I still wish we did that because that was super cool.
That is cool.
But no, we haven't done that for a while. But that was another thing like we used to do.
What is it like being someone from Minnesota and being able to be the in-arena, in-game host for your like hometown team? I can't even imagine. I would be like just like so honored to be able to do that for Chicago.
It's surreal. I think at this point, like I have moments where I catch myself, but and I think maybe like whenever all is said and done, like it'll really hit me like, okay, that was super cool. But when I first got the job, 4 years ago now, I just remember thinking this is so surreal. Like this is the team I would go to with my friends to go sit in the stands and just watch as a fan before it was even a thought that like, oh, like that could be my job someday. So yeah, and even just it's really cool. It's more of like a shared experience too, because my friends from back home, huge Wild fans. So like when I first got the job, like they were almost more excited for me. They were like, that's so cool because it's the team that we all watched and that they love. And it's funny. It's just funny sometimes too, because it'll be in the middle of a game and I'll have friends like watching the broadcast and I'll get like a Snapchat, like, I hear your voice on the TV. So it's just like, it's stuff like that where it's just funny. But no, I'm super grateful, thankful. I'm close to family, friends. So when anyone I know that comes to a game comes up, says hi, I feel very fortunate.
I just think that's so cool and such a unique experience to have and be that lucky and that you don't have to like do this job that you love for a team that you're like maybe not like rival, don't want to admit that you're a fan, and then you have all this gear for this team that you could like that you're like, this isn't my team. So
Mhm.
you've got the best of both worlds at the moment. I mean, obviously you go where the jobs are and you become a fan of another team if you have to, but
Definitely.
but right now you're just basking in the glory of what you get to do with your team. You mentioned the Frozen Four, the NCAA men's Frozen Four tournament that you got to work. Tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to hear sort of the experience of like collegiate hockey to the high school hockey in Minnesota, which is epic and everybody knows it for the like wacky hairdos that the boys come out with. Like give us sort of like an explanation of the varying degrees of fandom for sort of each level.
Yeah, so I've been very closely linked to college hockey for a while now because I went to school at St. Cloud State, a big Division One hockey school. That's the only, but men's and women's hockey are the only Division One programs at that school. Everything else is Division Two. So I was a ringside reporter for the men's team for 2 years, and so I also got to know a lot of people in the NCHC and followed all of those teams closely. So coming up to Frozen Four, it was really cool. Denver was there. It was cool to see the NCHC represented once again with having another national champion. That was really cool. And college fans are passionate. And the one thing I really admire about them is even if their team isn't in the Frozen Four, like if you look around that arena, it was sellout crowds for the games, but it wasn't even like everyone was wearing like Denver, Boston College, BU, and I'm blanking. Who was the other? there, I was just like, I shouldn't be blanking on who the other team was, but right
Both
now I'm having a
Boston's
moment.
and Denver,
Michigan.
Michigan.
Michigan. You look around the arena and it wasn't just those four teams' jerseys. Like, of course, there was a number of North Dakota fans, and not even just Minnesota being the host city or the host university, but there's a lot of Gophers jerseys. You see like Holy Cross, like a bunch of just random Division One schools being represented because their fans just come out in droves. So that's the one thing about college hockey I admire is there are diehard fans. They are loud, they are passionate. And then you look over at the high school level too. Everybody comes out. Like if you've seen the XL Energy Center for the state high school hockey tournament, every single game sold out. Like tickets will sell out within like 45 minutes of these games. Like you cannot get a ticket to get into the games because they sell out. Just people go nuts for high school hockey. High school hockey parents kind of scare me because they're just so intense, but both are really passionate.
It sounds like I know a while ago, and I think this has changed significantly in the last at least 10 years, but the NHL hockey in Minnesota was not always the most popular of the hockeys in Minnesota, right? Like, what shifted? What do you think made this change where the Wild are packing the arena now with their fan base and really supporting their NHL team?
I think there's a couple of factors. One, I believe, and I might be getting this wrong, but it's a very small number. This is us missing the postseason this year, I think is the second time since 2012 the Wild haven't been in the postseason. Now, granted, there's all the jokes that like the Wild are mild, like first round exits, like the Toronto Maple Leafs jokes, but like it's been a very consistent team who has been able to make it to the playoffs. So I think with that, it comes the expectation and then the hope too that like your team is going to be in the mix. So having, and the last few years too, we've been really fortunate to see some great hockey in St. Paul, the Wild being a strong contender in recent years. So, I mean, of course, that alone is going to help fill the seats. But I think another part too was, and I take it based on just what I have heard from people who were really around and dedicated at the time. But I think part of it was just coming around to the Wild as Minnesota's team in general. Like we had the Minnesota North Stars. Everyone knows what happened there. They ended up moving, going to Dallas. So Minnesota was without a hockey team for a few years. Then the Wild came back around. But I think part of it too is just still coming around to the North Stars are gone. The Minnesota Wild is the NHL team here. So I think it was just kind of a mix of that as well.
Yeah, just an adjustment to trying to adapt to a new name, a new team. How is this going to be different? You took our team away from us. Like, I'm sure a lot of this is what Arizona's feeling. And I wonder how much of they're going to learn from the example in Minnesota. If in 5 or 6 years, they really do get to bring the team back to Arizona, I think they could take some example from what you've all been through. That makes a lot of sense though. Yeah. I'm just really glad to hear that the fans are there and their butts are in the seats and have come around to it. Have you gone to the high school tournament, like the championship game tournament?
I don't know if I've ever been to the championship game, but I have like found my way in a couple of times to the state hockey tournament, only just because it's always been very random. Like I like will know somebody who knows somebody who's like, oh, like we have a spot in a suite or something, and like have made like an appearance up there for a little bit. But otherwise my butt has not like sat in the stands.
Yes.
So it'll happen sometime.
Yeah.
We'll see when I can get my hand on a ticket.
I agree. I'm with you on that. And the hairdos that they come out with and like that whole like beauty shot that they do for TV, I just think it's so good. And like this past year's theme was like yellow blonde. Did you see? It was like the blonde didn't blonde long enough for a lot of them or something, or maybe yellow was the intention. I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, there was a lot of like very brassy yellow hairstyles this year. It's always interesting, but like honestly the hockey hair team trying to get on there, just the hairstyles coming into the tournament, I truly think has almost been more of a goal than winning the state tournament itself.
Seriously. Like that's what they're planning, right? Like
absolutely.
What are we doing with our hair for this year?
No, 1,000%.
Yeah, they're lucky that Lula Morello isn't in charge of them, because like they get to be able to do whatever they want with their hair and they don't have to follow these strict like must have a shaved face and clean cut and no long hair and wearing a suit. I just think it's a great little corner of the hockey world that we get to enjoy. So I think
definitely it keeps things fun too, keeps them fresh and different.
Oh yeah. Okay, we have to talk about Flower and Duhaime, the prank war that is going on. Were you there when Duhaime came to see his car, had like the flower garden on the top of it and all, like no tires and they're all chained up? Like, were you there that day?
No, so that one was in Colorado.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, Duhaime's left. I'm mixing it up.
So
Flower's car was TP'd.
Yep. So that was, it had been building up. Like it was like small stuff. Like one time at morning skate, or not morning skate, it was just at practice in general. Like Brandon Duhaime had swapped out Fleury's goalie stick for like a cane, like called him 50 years old in an interview. So it was like those little things just playing with fire. So then, and it was funny too, because Fleury embraced it. Like he was like actually playing with the cane during practice, like trying to use that as his goalie stick instead. But it was like started off small. So there was that. And then as retaliation, like Fleury swapped out like some of his clothes for like that fur jacket and the fur boots and like stole his shirt. So like then messed with his wardrobe. So then at the trade deadline, Duhaime, while on the road trip, was traded to Colorado. And so not long after that, I think it was just 1 or 2 games right after that happened, Duhaime came back to Minnesota. So part of the season blur. So if I'm getting details wrong, I'm sorry, guys. But regardless, Duhaime came back to Minnesota. And I actually think I was at morning skate that day because I think I was interviewing Cale Makar briefly for Hobie Baker stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see the car in person or anything, but I like heard about it from some of the security guards that like that happened. So I went on Twitter and looked, and yeah, Duhaime, he didn't admit it, but like he had TP'd Fleury's entire car. And then Fleury was on video saying like, does he not realize we go to Colorado in 2 days? And it was absolutely iconic. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw that, I was like, this is so over the top. Like taking the tires off, chaining the tires up, dirt, flowers on the hood of the car. Like I want to know like how they ended up fixing that. Like how Duhaime, because he was on video too. He's like, I'll deal with this later, and gets a ride off with somebody. Apparently Duhaime had just had his car shipped to Colorado from Minnesota. So his car had only been there for like 2 days, and that happened. But I just want to see the aftermath. I want to like get video of like how did Duhaime like put his car back together.
Yeah.
But iconic, like very over the top. I also heard that like they had dinner that night and Duhaime was like, I'm waving the white flag. So prank war might be done, but that last prank by Fleury is iconic.
It was so good. And you get Fleury for another year. I'm so excited. He's staying on another year, and you get to experience all the magic that he brings to the arena and the fans and everything. That prank, yeah, we need to find the like who actually, where's the follow-up story, Kirsten, to like who helped Duhaime like clean off his car? Like did Flower clean off the TP on his car? Like did he pay somebody to do it? Like what happened, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know who even helped Fleury do the prank. I know he had helpers.
Of course.
I think part of it was the Wild Digital team that also helped. But I don't know if they've like revealed who the helpers were or not yet. So
you could never admit.
I don't know. There's some layers to this.
Yeah, no, they can't. They're never going to tell us, because then what's Flower going to do? He needs his accomplices, alleged.
This is true.
Alleged accomplices.
This is true.
You know, he doesn't always admit to his pranks. Do you have any good stories of interactions with any of the Wild players, or even from your time in the Beauty League, like when you worked with them, like any fun, quirky, interesting, funny experiences you can share?
So from the Beauty League, and it's not like embarrassing. It's just kind of funny. I was interviewing former Wild player Nick Bugstead. I'm going to start off by saying one of the nicest guys. He's so nice. I was interviewing him, and we were like in the middle of like a question or something, and like he accidentally like spit on me while he was talking. I'm sorry if this is embarrassing to anybody. I just think it's really funny.
It is.
He accidentally like spit on me, and I wasn't going to say anything. I wasn't going to bring attention to it because sometimes that just happens. Mm-hmm. But like he like had his hockey gloves, and like he was like, oh, sorry, and like wiped it off, or like was trying to be polite about it or something. And I just like kind of stood there laughing. It was like, this would happen. So that's like one funny encounter from Beauty League. I truly think Nick Bugstead only like recognizes me, or like recognized me after that because of that encounter. So I always think that's funny too. One of the more recent, so a lot of my interactions I get with the Wild players is through our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So this season we have had him on twice now. We got him when he played for the University of Minnesota his final year, got him early this year. So Brock Faber, had him on. Such a nice guy, a tough guy. I don't know if you knew he was playing this season with broken ribs. So that came out on Friday. So think of just the incredible year he's had. Never missed a shift, never missed a game, and he was playing with broken ribs. So I just think that's really badass.
Yeah.
And so he's a tough guy too.
That's insane.
Yeah, literally. Not let alone put up all the numbers that he put up, playing like 30 minutes a night. Insane. But we had him on our podcast early this season, and I always like to ask like players, like, how do you feel about Taylor Swift? Like, what about Taylor Swift? Like something to do with that. It's kind of become my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like along those lines. I was talking to Brock Faber about it, and I always like to joke that he thinks I'm crazy because there was this one little snippet in the interview I was talking about Taylor Swift, and also Brock Faber is known for his facial expressions. Like even we found out from some of his Gopher teammates, like they'll make fun of him when he's caught on camera, like during a Bally Sports interview at intermission or something. He's just very expressive. So I was talking about Taylor Swift. The look he gave me at one point was just really funny. And then he just like paused and he's like, okay. And my co-host like thought it was so funny. So I just joke with people. I'm like, Brock Faber thinks I'm crazy, which he might. And I embraced that. So you know, those are a couple of my interactions.
That's great. I love it. So you've done, I think that's awesome that you get to interview a lot of the guys on your podcast, which I think is awesome. So people can go listen to those interviews. We don't want to give away all the goods.
We had Jake Middleton on. That was a fun one. That was from last season, I think. But regardless, still a listen.
Bar Down Beauties podcast. You'll have to check it out after you finish this episode of the House of Hockey podcast, though. But yes, go listen and support. Jesse is your co-host, right?
Yep. Jesse Pierce, a writer for NHL.com.
Yes. Go support their podcast too. But I want to hear about the PWHL in Minnesota because we've been really big supporters of the PWHL and trying to promote it, talk about it, and it has been nearly impossible to get anybody to do an interview. I think maybe just we're a smaller podcast, but the league's been inundated with requests and stuff. But you're doing in-arena in-game hosting for them, and you got to interview Taylor Heise. Mm-hmm. And if people don't know who she is, she was the number one draft pick of the year for Minnesota. Like you've got Kendall Coyne-Schofield's in Minnesota, right? She's on the Minnesota team. And I'm still trying to like learn all of the players and then remember which one's Canada, which one's USA because of their rivalry thing. And my brain gets crossed the wires with who's on what team these days. But what has that experience been like for the in-game, for the fans, for the women, supporting the women and going to the games?
It's been really cool. I love what I get to do with the Wild, but the PWHL for Minnesota, I'm still trying to figure out what exactly it is, but it's just so different. And I think it might be the like types of fans who are coming out to those games specifically. And by that, I mean like the really young girls, the little girls, the girls who play like youth hockey, seeing them all come out in droves in their youth hockey jerseys, seeing them start the chants, get super excited, super loud. Like you can just feel a different energy there. And it comes from those excitement from those little girls who are watching these players. We get to do interviews during intermission we call them youth hockey players of the game and whatnot. And sitting there like asking the girls, I'm like, who's your favorite hockey player? And it's cool. Instead of being like Kirill Kaprizov or Marc-Andre Fleury, like in that respect, it's always like Taylor Heise, Grace Zumwinkle, like Maddie Rooney. So it's really cool. It's inspiring even for me. I don't play hockey professionally or hockey period, just to see these little girls get so excited and to have role models and people to look up to. And like even the parents too, who are there, like any interaction at the game, they're like, thank you so much. Like, this is so great. I think that's the best way I can describe it. There's so much excitement.
There is. I went to a PWHL Boston game, and it was really exciting. And I can't wait until the league gets the names going, because I
Mhm.
think there's going to just be that much more camaraderie and for the fans to really identify with something, and it's going to make an even bigger impact. And what the league just broke more records with the Montreal game
Mhm.
just a couple days ago. So it's incredible to see how much the fandom for the women's professional women's hockey has grown in such a short period of time. And I think it's only going to get bigger. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I've one of the correlating things too that I've noticed this year, and I'm interested to kind of learn more. I want somebody, I'm throwing this out there, somebody do the work for me, somebody do
Right.
the research on it. But it's been really, really interesting and cool to see not only the PWHL, but the PWHL WNBA both skyrocket,
Mhm.
take off at the same time. Not only just WNBA, but women's college basketball. Like you look at the statistics with March Madness. Now, I know a lot of that has to do with Caitlin Clark as well. So kind of just looking at that in the same way, just like how women's sports as a whole, all across the board, have been skyrocketing in viewership this past year. And I think this year, what we've seen with the PWHL, again, going back to the same word, it's exciting. A solid foundation, I think, is being built. Like the foundation that's being laid right now seems like it's really sturdy enough to continue to just build and continue to get this thing off the ground in years to come. So I think the one thing with women's hockey, there's a lot of people who have come before to
Mhm.
make the PWHL possible. So giving them their respect and their credit, because this wouldn't be possible without any of them. But I think this is where we're really going to see a strong future for women's hockey.
It's exciting to see what's going to come. I'm excited for it and big proponent of it. I love that the games are on YouTube. There's no excuse to not be able to watch it anywhere. I think that was a huge move to get started, to build the connection, and because we are only in 6 cities, and to be able to really bring the game to everybody and be such a role model for these young women who are playing. Now they have a reason to want to play hockey beyond midget hockey, or even beyond high school. They have something to strive for that's actually tangible and real, and
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing that like play out in our lifetime, which I think is just really cool to see. We're going to be like interviewing those 8-year-old girls you're talking to at the game, are going to be on the ice one day, and you're going to be interviewing them as like players. I just think it's really cool to watch the history unfold.
No, absolutely. I agree completely.
Yeah. All right. I feel like I have to ask you about Taylor Swift's new album, because you're sort of like a Swiftie expert here. I know you love her. I'm a fan. I wouldn't say I'm a Swiftie. I've been to
Mhm.
a concert. I loved her country music. I like a lot of her music. Um, what is your review of the new album?
I have joked with so many people the last week, and it's not even really a joke. Like, it is like, I should, because I have been asked a lot about this recently, and it's like, there's not enough time. Like, I could do a TED talk about this. Like, I know way too much.
Mhm.
But the new album, I absolutely love it. I love and embrace vulnerability from people. And that is what this album is. It's raw, authentic, vulnerable. The lyrics are absolutely gutting. There's not just the 17, actually, technically like 20 songs. We got 31 songs, more than the 20 we thought we were getting. So there's just a lot of new lyrics to memorize. But some of these songs are just truly like painful to listen to. Like
Mm.
there's one song on the album, like I legitimately cried listening to it. Like it just cuts deep. I love the album, but I need to listen to it in doses because like I said, it's intense,
Well,
but
it
it
is
is
the
brilliant.
Tortured Poets Department.
Yep, the Tortured Poets Department.
I mean, the torturing is in the title, so
Absolutely.
emotionally.
There's nothing upbeat on this album. There's not like an upbeat poppy song. Like they're some of them are dark, but I love it.
Yeah. It's a new side of her we get to see.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Is that one song really a dig at Kim Kardashian? The
I don't see how it
KIM.
couldn't be.
I know.
Like, so the song that you're talking about, it's called Thank You, Amy. The whole title is in lowercase letters. The only letters she capitalized were the KIM in the title. So it's like, any lyrics in that song aside, look at the name. You're going to tell me the name isn't? Like, she literally, quite literally spelt it out for you.
I think it's great. I think it's the
I
best
think so,
revenge. You know, success
That's a
too.
great song, too.
Yes, the best revenge. And to be, what do you, I have a lot of Taylor Swift questions. What do you think of Travis?
Oh, I'm here for it. I think he's great. Like, he seems very solid.
I love it. I like sort of wish that Taylor had connected with Jeff Skinner many, many years ago when they like took a picture, and he's a big Swiftie. And I'm like, I wish we had that. I wish we had Taylor in the NHL. we have Carrie Underwood, but not anymore. She's not like active in our world at the moment, but she was when Mike was still playing before he retired. I was like, wait, what's her husband's name? Fisher. We don't have anybody like that.
We really don't.
Who should we have?
Trying to think of who like the current power couple in the NHL would be. I can't think of anybody at the moment.
We don't like, our world isn't like that. Like,
no, hockey players go for, I think, the more low key women.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
the only predominant one I can think of is like Lauren Oshie, because I feel like she's the most heavily active on social media. So I could be wrong, but right now she's just the biggest one that's coming to mind.
Yeah, she falls more under that like influencer space. Like, we don't have any like celebrity famous Taylor Swift people. Like, I'm kind of glad we don't, though, because we saw just how much it overtook, but it was good for the NFL, I think. But regardless, a lot of people have different opinions about that.
Yeah.
So we won't get into all of that. So our final 3 questions on this podcast, to wrap it up, are: who is your favorite hockey hunk? And hunk could be looks and or just favorite player.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. There's a couple. Well, Tyler Sagan is the obvious answer.
Yeah.
So it's the tattoos, it's the beard. That for me. There's a few, honestly. Like Andrei Svechnikov, how could you not? There's another one more closer to home that he's allegedly a Taylor Swift fan, so I think that's what really did it for me. But Jonas Brodin on the Wild, now I'm just like, never talked to him, but I'm like, okay. It was honestly being like, I hear he's a Taylor Swift fan.
He's good in your book.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the ones that automatically come to mind.
I love it. And then who is your favorite hockey lady?
Ooh, like in what regards?
Well, now that we have the PWHL, I would say like professional player wise, but it could also be hockey wife. We've had broadcaster, any hockey lady.
I feel like I can boast a few different ones here. Well, obviously, first and foremost, she fits a few of those categories. Wife, youth hockey mom. I think at least one of her kids plays hockey. Carrie Underwood. I'm absolutely obsessed with her. When Mike Fisher was the captain, Carrie was heavily around the Nashville Predators. Just obsessed. Love her. Another one, and I don't know really anything about her, but she, again, involved in the Wild organization, the captain's wife. I've heard great things about her. I've never talked to her. I don't think I've even ever really seen her around, but she just seems like very involved behind the scenes. So from what I've heard, she just seems like the definition of what like a hockey wife is, let alone like the captain's wife, heavily involved, making everyone feel included. Danielle Spurgeon, so Jared Spurgeon's wife, heard, like I said, great things about her. Hockey broadcaster, there's so many, like Sarah Sivian. I know she's a writer. I think she's hilarious. So like I look up to her and just kind of like her authenticity. My co-host Jessie Pierce, like a mom, writer, like works super hard. There's another one, Jamie Hirsch, NHL Network. She's also fantastic. Jackie Redmond too. I love Jackie Redmond. I know she's kind of gone a little bit more WWE and everything as opposed to just NHL, but she is somebody I really look up to, admire. I love everything. Yeah. So there's so many women I could just boast about right now.
I know. There's a lot. I love it. It's changed so much since we started asking that question 4 years ago on the podcast, because there's just so many more women. And like you said, the spotlight has sort of shifted with a culmination of things happening in the WNBA and Caitlin Clark and just this, and women's volleyball in college was like some of the most watched sport, and like just this big shift into women in sports, I think even more so, has put a good spotlight on it. And then the last question is, do you have a Sidney Crosby story?
Ooh, do I? I don't, that's an interesting question. He's shorter in person than I ever thought he would be. So I think, yeah, because so the last 2 years I've been at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex out in just outside of Pittsburgh working an event. And so the Penguins, it had always been like coming right off of All-Star break. And so we'd be at the same facility and our event would start right after their morning's practice or morning skate, whatever. And so like I would just sit there and just watch their practice because why not? And so I remember seeing Sidney Crosby just like skating around. One, super cool because it's freaking Sidney Crosby. But also I just remember thinking to myself, like, he's a lot shorter in person than I thought he would be. So I guess that's my Sidney Crosby story.
I love that you are authentically just saying that because it's true. He is.
I mean, I don't think he's short, but even if he was, we love a short king.
Yeah. And I think we're just so used to them feeling so much taller anyway on skates and stuff and with their gear, and they're just like these gigantic things. And they're just guys underneath all that stuff, as Jake Middleton has showed us.
Absolutely.
Happily with tarps off. Where can people listen to your podcast? Shout it out. Tell people what they can expect. When do you drop episodes?
Yeah. So the podcast is the Bar Down Beauties podcast. We literally are everywhere. So YouTube, we have video episodes. Otherwise, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We cover NHL, but specifically the Minnesota Wild, and we do weekly episodes. That might change up a little bit this off season. It might go down to bi-weekly, but as of right now, every single week, especially during the season. And
do you guys cover PWHL too yet or not yet?
We've had a few PWHL players on this season. So we've had Kelly Panic, Grace Sumwinkle. So we definitely dive into PWHL as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming over to our House of Hockey podcast and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And in the meantime, you can follow us on social media. Just look for House of Hockey podcast. We'll be back next week.